On Christmas Eve, 1945, in a small town in West Virginia, 10 people went to sleep in a 2-story house on a hill. By the next morning, the house was gone, burned to the ground. 5 members of the family had escaped into the freezing night, but 5 of the children were missing. The official story was simple and terrible. The fire took them. They were gone. But when the ashes cooled and the family searched the ruins of their home, they found something that made no sense. Nothing. No bones, no teeth, no trace of 5 children. A house fire, investigators claimed, hot enough to erase 5 human bodies completely. Yet it left the household appliances intact, and it burned for only a matter of hours. For the parents, George and Jenny Sodder, that impossible absence became the beginning of a question they would chase for the rest of their lives. Because in the weeks that followed, the strange phone calls started, then the sightings. Then, decades later, a photograph in the mail. Did 5 children die in that Christmas fire? Or did someone take them and want the world to believe they were dead? 80 years later, nobody knows. George Sodder came to America from Sardinia, Italy, as a 13-year-old boy in 1908. He built himself up from nothing, first working the railroads, then starting his own trucking company hauling coal. He married Jenny, another Italian immigrant, and together they raised 10 children in Fayetteville, West Virginia. By 1945, they were one of the most respected middle-class families in the area. George was hard-working, successful, and outspoken. He had strong opinions, and he wasn't afraid to share them. In particular, he was loudly critical of Benito Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy. And in a town with many Italian immigrants, some of whom still supported Mussolini, that made him enemies. In the months before the fire, strange things began to happen. A stranger came to the house looking for work. He wandered to the back, pointed at the fuse boxes and said, "This is going to cause a fire someday." George had just had the wiring inspected. It was fine. Then a life insurance salesman, angry that George refused to buy a policy, warned him, "Your house will go up in smoke, and your children will be destroyed because of the dirty remarks you've been making about Mussolini." And in the weeks before Christmas, the older children noticed a car, parked, watching, its occupants studying the younger Sodder children as they walked home from school. Christmas Eve, 1945. The oldest daughter, Marion, had bought toys for her younger siblings, and the children begged to stay up late playing. Their mother, Jenny, said yes, just a little longer. Then she went upstairs to bed with the youngest, 3-year-old Sylvia. George and the 2 oldest boys were already asleep. Around 1 a.m., Jenny woke up. She heard a loud thump on the roof, something landing hard above her, then a rolling sound. She listened. Nothing more. She went back to sleep. Half an hour later, she woke again, this time to the smell of smoke. She got up and found that the room George used as an office was on fire. She woke George. The 2 of them, and 4 of the children, escaped the burning house, but 5 children were still upstairs. Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, and little Betty, 5. And now every single thing that could go wrong did. George tried to run back up the stairs, but they were already engulfed in flames. He went outside to climb to the upstairs window, but the ladder that always leaned against the house was gone, vanished. He tried to start one of his 2 coal trucks, to drive it up beneath the window and climb on top. Neither truck would start, though both had worked perfectly the day before. Jenny tried to call the fire department. The phone was dead. A neighbor tried to call too. No response. And the fire department, just 2.5 miles away, did not arrive until 8 in the morning. By then, there was nothing left but ash. In the morning, George and Jenny stood before the smoking ruins of their home, believing their 5 children had died in the flames. But almost immediately, the details refused to line up. First, the ladder. George's ladder, which always leaned against the house, was found later thrown down an embankment far away. Someone had moved it. Second, the trucks. 2 working vehicles, both dead on the same night. Later it was found the phone line hadn't burned in the fire, as first claimed. It had been cut, cleanly, by someone who climbed the pole. And there was the thump on the roof and the rolling sound Jenny heard just before the fire. Months later, when the snow melted, little Sylvia found a strange object in the yard. A small, hard, dark green rubber ball. George believed it was the casing of a pineapple bomb, a military incendiary device, something thrown onto the roof. A bus driver who passed the house that night came forward. He said he had seen people throwing balls of fire at the Sodder home. And then there was the fire itself. It burned the house down in a matter of hours. But a house fire does not cremate a human body to nothing. Even in a crematorium, at far higher temperatures over far longer time, bones remain. 5 children, and not a single fragment of bone recovered from the ashes. That single fact would haunt the family forever. George couldn't accept it. So he began to investigate himself. He contacted a crematorium operator, who told him what he already suspected. Even after intense cremation, bones always remain. Jenny ran her own grim experiments, burning animal bones to see what survived flame. Every test left fragments behind. Their conclusion hardened. Their children had not burned to nothing in that house, which meant they may never have been in the house at all when it burned. And then came the reports. In the weeks and months after the fire, people came forward. A woman said she saw the missing children peering from a passing car during the fire. A tourist stop operator said she had served the children breakfast the morning after. A woman at a hotel said she saw 4 of the 5 children, accompanied by 2 adults who spoke Italian and who refused to let her talk to them. The Sodders began to believe the unthinkable, that their children had been kidnapped before the fire, and the blaze was set to cover it. Perhaps revenge for George's words against Mussolini. Perhaps something to do with the strange men and the watching car. They hired private investigators. They chased leads across the country. And the strangest was still to come. Years later, Jenny received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a photograph of a young man. He looked, unmistakably, like their son Louis would look, grown up. On the back was a cryptic handwritten note, but there was no way to trace who had sent it, and it led nowhere. George and Jenny Sodder never stopped searching. In 1952, they put up a billboard along the highway near their home. It showed the faces of all 5 children, Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty, with the words, "What was their fate?" And it offered a reward for any information that would bring them home. For decades, travelers passing through Fayetteville looked into the faces of those 5 children. The billboard became a landmark, a permanent roadside plea from a family that refused to give up. The official investigation offered them nothing. The state closed the case, calling it hopeless. The FBI briefly took it up as a possible kidnapping, then dropped it. Every institution that could have helped walked away, and so the questions remained, and remain still. Why were there no remains? Why was the ladder moved, the phone line cut, the trucks disabled, all on the same night? Who threw something onto the roof? Who was watching the children from that car? And who sent the photograph of a grown man who looked like Louis? George Sodder died in 1969, still believing his children were alive somewhere in the world. Jenny kept the memorial garden until her death in 1989, and only then was the billboard finally taken down. Their youngest daughter, Sylvia, who survived the fire as a toddler, believed until her own death in 2021 that her siblings did not die that night. 5 children went to sleep on Christmas Eve. By morning, they were gone, with no bodies, no answers, and no ending. This has been The Dark Stories. Sleep well